the stagecoach that brought Victoria Hart to Old Tucson, Arizona Territory, in the scorching August of 1882, carried more than dust and despair. It carried a woman who had run out of reasons to keep breathing, yet somehow her lungs still drew air against her will. She stepped down onto the hard, packed earth with legs that trembled from more than just the 3-day journey from Santa Fe. The hem of her black mourning dress dragged through the dirt, collecting Arizona dust like it had collected everything else worthless along the way. Victoria was 22 years old and felt like she had lived 100 lifetimes, each one ending worse than the last. Her blonde hair, once carefully arranged, now fell in limp waves around her pale face. Blue eyes that had once sparkled with dreams stared ahead with the empty gaze of someone who had seen those dreams burn to ash. The advertisement had been clear enough. Mail-order bride needed for prosperous rancher in Arizona Territory. Must be of good moral character and willing to work hard. Victoria had answered it with hands that shook so badly she could barely hold the pen. Good moral character. The words had almost made her laugh, a bitter sound that never quite made it past her throat. What did morality matter when you were starving? What did character mean when you had nowhere left to go? The man who was supposed to meet her, a rancher named Gerald Sutton, was not at the station. Victoria stood there as the stagecoach pulled away, leaving her alone with a single battered trunk that contained everything she owned in this world. The sun beat down mercilessly, and she could feel sweat beginning to trickle down her back beneath the heavy black fabric. She had worn mourning for 6 months now, ever since her father died and left her with nothing but debts, and the wandering hands of his business partner, who thought a young woman alone was easy prey. She had fled Philadelphia with barely enough money for the train west, then the stage coach south into Arizona Territory. Every cent had gone into getting here, into answering that advertisement, into this one last desperate gamble that maybe, just maybe, she could find some kind of life that did not involve selling herself in the only ways a destitute woman could. "You look lost, miss." The voice made her jump. She turned to find a man standing a respectful distance away, his hat in his hands. He was tall, probably in his late 20s, with sun-darkened skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were a warm hazel, and they looked at her with something she had not seen in a long time, genuine concern without calculation behind it. "I am waiting for someone," Victoria said, hating how her voice came out thin and uncertain. "A Mr. Gerald Sutton. He was supposed to meet me here." The man's expression shifted, something uncomfortable crossing his features. He glanced away, then back at her, and she felt her stomach drop even before he spoke. "Miss, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Gerald Sutton died 2 weeks ago. Heart gave out while he was working in the heat. We buried him up on the hill behind the church." The world tilted. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face, felt her knees start to buckle. She had nothing. No money for a ticket anywhere else. No family to return to. No prospects. This had been her last chance, and it had died 2 weeks ago while she was still traveling toward it, still nursing that tiny, fragile hope that maybe things could get better. Whoa there. The man moved quickly, catching her elbow as she swayed. His grip was steady and warm, anchoring her to reality even as everything else seemed to spin away. "When did you last eat something?" Yesterday morning, I think." The words came out automatically. She had been saving her last few coins, trying to make them stretch just a little further. The man muttered something under his breath that might have been a curse. "Come on. The hotel restaurant is just across the street. Let me get you some food." "I cannot." Victoria started, but he was already picking up her trunk like it weighed nothing, tucking it under one arm while keeping his other hand gentle but firm on her elbow. "Yes, you can. I am Owen Zimmerman, and my mama would come back from the grave to tan my hide if I left a lady standing in the sun about to faint from hunger. We will get some food in you, and then we will figure out what is to be done." Victoria let herself be guided across the dusty street, too drained to protest, too empty to feel anything but a distant surprise that someone was being kind without demanding something in return. The hotel restaurant was blessedly cool and dim after the harsh sunlight. Owen settled her at a table and ordered food without asking what she wanted, clearly recognizing that she was beyond making decisions. When the food came, beef stew thick with vegetables and fresh bread still warm from the oven, Victoria's hands shook as she picked up the spoon. She forced herself to eat slowly, even though her stomach cramped with hunger. Owen sat across from her, nursing a cup of coffee, not watching her directly but keeping an eye on her in a way that felt protective rather than predatory. "Thank you," she said when she had eaten enough to feel almost human again. "I do not know how I will repay you. Do not worry about that." Owen set down his cup. "What brought you to Old Tucson to meet Gerald Sutton?" There was no point in lying. Victoria met his eyes directly. "I answered his advertisement for a mail-order bride. I had no family left, no money, and no other options. It seemed like the only door still open to me." She waited for judgment, for disgust, for that shift in expression that would tell her he now saw her as desperate and therefore worthless. But Owen just nodded slowly, his face thoughtful. "That took courage," he said. "Traveling all this way alone, trusting that things would work out. I am sorry they did not." The unexpected kindness in his words made Victoria's throat tighten. She looked down at her empty bowl, blinking rapidly. "It does not matter now. I have no money for passage anywhere else. I suppose I will have to find work here somehow." "What kind of work can you do?" "I can read and write. I keep accounts well. I can sew, cook, clean, manage a household." She took a breath. "I am educated. My father believed daughters should be as well schooled as sons. I can even do figures and help with business matters." Owen leaned back in his chair, studying her with an expression she could not quite read. "I have a ranch about 5 miles outside of town," he said slowly. "The Broken Z. Been running it myself since my parents died 3 years back. It is not a big operation, maybe 200 head of cattle, some horses. I have 2 men who help with the heavy work, but the house." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "The house is falling apart because I spend all my time keeping the ranch running. I need help. Not a wife," he added quickly, seeing her stiffen. "An employee. Someone to manage the household, keep the books, handle the domestic side of things. Room and board plus wages. Fair wages." Victoria stared at him. "You do not know anything about me. I know you are educated, desperate, and honest enough to tell me so. I know you have courage and you are willing to work hard. That is more than most can say." He met her eyes steadily. "I am offering you a job, Miss Hart. Nothing more, nothing less. You would have your own room, your own space. No expectations beyond the work itself. And if it does not suit you, or if you want to move on once you have earned enough for passage elsewhere, that would be your choice." "Why?" The word came out sharper than she intended. "Why would you help me?" Owen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but firm. "Because I have been desperate. Because I know what it is like to feel like you are standing at the edge of a cliff with nowhere left to go. And because someone helped me once when they did not have to, and I swore I would pass that forward if I ever got the chance." There was truth in his words, in his eyes. Victoria had learned to read men, to see the lies beneath their smiles, to spot the danger before it struck. She saw none of that in Owen Zimmerman. What she saw was genuine, straightforward decency, rare as gold and twice as valuable. "I accept," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "and thank you, truly." Owen smiled then, a real smile that lit up his weathered face. "Good. Finish your coffee and we will head out. I have to pick up supplies and then we will get you settled at the ranch." The ride out to the Broken Z gave Victoria her first real look at the Arizona territory. The landscape was harsh and beautiful in equal measure. All red rock and hardy scrub brush, mountains rising in the distance like ancient sentinels. The heat was different from Philadelphia's summer humidity, drier but more intense. The sun a physical presence beating down from a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Owen's wagon rattled over the rutted road, loaded with supplies from the general store. He had insisted on buying her some practical clothes, simple cotton dresses and a split riding skirt that made her raise her eyebrows. "You will need it on a ranch," he had said matter-of-factly. "Cannot do anything in those heavy skirts." Now he drove with easy competence, one hand loose on the reins while he pointed out landmarks. "That is the Anderson place over there. Good neighbors, though their youngest boy has more enthusiasm than sense. Nearly started a stampede last month showing off his roping skills. And that creek, when it has water in it, marks the western edge of my property." "When it has water?" Victoria asked. "Monsoon season. July and August usually bring afternoon storms, makes the whole desert bloom for a few weeks. Rest of the year, we rely on wells and the river deeper into the property." Victoria listened, filing away information. She was good at that, at learning new systems and understanding how things worked. It had served her well managing her father's household after her mother died when she was 16. 6 years of running a home, keeping accounts, managing servants, all while her father's fortune slowly declined and his drinking steadily increased. She pushed those memories away. That life was over. This was something new, something different. Maybe not what she had imagined, but at least it was something. The ranch house came into view as they crested a small rise. It was a low, adobe structure with a covered porch running along the front, backed by a barn and several outbuildings. The yard was neat enough, but even from a distance, Victoria could see the signs of neglect Owen had mentioned. Shutters hanging crooked, porch steps that looked uneven, garden beds overrun with weeds. "I know it is not much," Owen said, and there was something almost apologetic in his tone. "It is honest work and a roof over my head," Victoria replied. "That is more than I had an hour ago." 2 men emerged from the barn as Owen pulled the wagon to a stop. One was older, probably in his 50s, with graying hair and a weathered face full of wrinkles. The other was younger, maybe early 20s, with red hair and a scattering of freckles across his sunburned nose. "Boys, this is Miss Victoria Hart," Owen said as he jumped down from the wagon. "She will be managing the house and keeping our books in order. Miss Hart, this is Charlie Morrison and Jack Peters." Charlie, the older man, touched his hat respectfully. "Madam, good to have you. Place has been going to seed without proper management." Jack looked curious but friendly. "Nice to meet you, Miss Hart. You get settled, and we will try not to track too much mud through your clean floors." "I appreciate that," Victoria said, accepting Owen's hand as he helped her down from the wagon. "Though I suspect some mud is inevitable." Owen showed her inside while Charlie and Jack unloaded the supplies. The house was larger than it looked from outside, with a main room that served as both kitchen and sitting area, a hallway leading to 4 bedrooms, and a separate room that Owen used as an office. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, dishes piled in the basin, papers scattered across every surface. "Like I said, falling apart," Owen said ruefully. "Your room is this one here." He opened a door to reveal a modest bedroom with a real bed frame, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "It is not fancy, but the mattress is decent and the roof does not leak." Victoria set down her bag and looked around. The room was sparse but clean enough, and most importantly, it had a door that closed. Privacy, safety, space of her own, luxuries she had almost forgotten existed. "It is perfect," she said and meant it. Owen looked relieved. "Good, I will let you get settled. Supper is usually around sundown. We eat in the main room, nothing formal, and Miss Hart." He paused at the doorway. "Welcome to the Broken Z." Over the next few days, Victoria threw herself into work with an intensity that surprised even her. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, organized Owen's chaotic papers into a system that actually made sense, inventoried the supplies, and found several items they were running low on. She cooked real meals for the four of them, stews and roasts and fresh bread, and watched with quiet satisfaction as the men ate with genuine appreciation. Owen kept his word about everything. He treated her with unfailing respect, never crossing any lines, never making her feel unsafe or uncomfortable. He worked from dawn until well past dusk, coming in dusty and exhausted to eat whatever she had prepared, always thanking her, always treating her like a valued employee rather than a desperate woman with nowhere else to go. But Victoria saw things. She saw how hard he worked, how he pushed himself beyond reasonable limits. She saw the worry in his eyes when he reviewed the account books, though he never said anything to burden her with his concerns. She saw how he treated his men fairly, paying them on time, working alongside them rather than just giving orders. She also saw the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not paying attention. Not with lust or ownership, but with something softer, something almost wondering. It made her heart do strange things she was not ready to examine too closely. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Victoria was on the porch mending one of Owen's shirts when a rider came thundering into the yard. Charlie and Jack emerged from the barn, hands moving instinctively toward their guns, but the rider called out in a friendly voice, "Easy, boys, just bringing news." Owen came out of the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. "Sam, what brings you out here?" Sam, a weathered man probably in his 40s, swung down from his horse. "Warning, mostly. Jenkins is making noise again about water rights. Says you have been taking more than your share from the river." Owen's jaw tightened. "I've taken exactly what I am entitled to according to the agreement we all signed 3 years ago." "I know that, and you know that, but Jenkins is looking for a fight. He has hired a couple of new hands, the type who wear their guns low and look like they know how to use them." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine despite the evening heat. Jenkins. She had heard the name mentioned a few times, always with a certain tension. Apparently, he owned the largest ranch in the area and did not appreciate competition. "Thanks for the warning," Owen said quietly. "I will keep an eye out." After Sam left, Victoria found Owen standing by the corral staring out at the darkening landscape. She approached carefully, not wanting to intrude but feeling compelled to offer something, though she was not sure what. "This Jenkins," she said. "Is he a serious threat?" Owen glanced at her, then back at the horizon. "Maybe, probably. He has been trying to buy me out for 2 years now, thinks he should own everything from here to the mountains. I keep refusing, so he keeps looking for ways to pressure me. What will you do?" "What I have been doing. Work hard, follow the law, and hope that is enough." He turned to face her fully. "Do not worry, Miss Hart. Whatever happens, I will make sure you are safe." "I am not worried about myself," Victoria said, and realized with some surprise that it was true. "I am worried about you, about all of you." Something shifted in Owen's expression. "You care about this place already?" "I care about people who have been kind to me," Victoria said. "That is a rare enough thing that I know its value." They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Victoria felt something unfurling in her chest, something she had thought was dead. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. Tiny and fragile, but undeniably there. The trouble with Jenkins came faster than any of them expected. Victoria was hanging laundry 3 days later when she heard shouting from the direction of the river. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran toward the sound, gathering her skirts with both hands. She found Owen and Charlie facing off against 3 men on horseback. The men all had that hard look Sam had mentioned, hands resting casually near their guns in a way that was anything but casual. One of them, presumably Jenkins himself based on his expensive clothes and air of authority, sat his horse with the confidence of someone used to getting his way. "I am telling you, Zimmerman, you have been taking more than your share of water. I have witnesses who will testify to it." "Then your witnesses are lying," Owen said calmly, though Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders. "I have taken exactly what I am entitled to, and we both know it." "Do we?" Jenkins leaned forward in his saddle. "Because it seems to me that a small-time rancher like yourself might be desperate enough to bend the rules, especially now that you have extra mouths to feed." His gaze flickered toward Victoria, and there was something unpleasant in it. She forced herself to meet his eyes steadily, refusing to show fear. "Miss Hart is none of your concern," Owen said, his voice going hard. "And this conversation is over. You have your water rights, I have mine. If you have an actual legal complaint, take it to the territorial court. Otherwise, get off my land." For a long moment, Victoria thought Jenkins would push it further. The tension hung thick in the air, dust motes drifting in the afternoon sun, everything frozen on the edge of violence. Then Jenkins smiled, a cold expression that did not reach his eyes. "We will see what the court has to say then. But courts take time, Zimmerman, and cattle need water every day." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. Owen did not relax until they were out of sight. "That was not good," Charlie said quietly. "No," Owen agreed. "No, it was not." That night, Victoria found herself unable to sleep. She got up, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, and went to the kitchen to make tea. She found Owen already there, sitting at the table with papers spread out in front of him, working by lamplight. Could not sleep either. She asked. He looked up, and in the lamplight she could see the worry etched across his face. "Too much to think about. If Jenkins takes this to court, even if I win eventually, the legal fees could ruin me. And in the meantime, if he tries to cut off my water access, the cattle would suffer. The cattle would die, and with them, the ranch." Victoria sat down across from him. "How much would the legal fees be?" Owen named a sum that made her wince. It was substantial, probably most of his savings. "And that is if it gets resolved quickly. If he drags it out, which he will because he can afford to, it could be twice that. What are your options? Sell to him for whatever he is willing to pay, which will not be fair market value, or fight and risk losing everything trying to hold on." Owen rubbed his face tiredly. "I do not know, Miss Hart. I honestly do not know." Victoria looked at the papers spread across the table, the careful accounts she had organized, the records of water usage that clearly showed Owen had stayed within his legal rights. An idea began to form in her mind. "What if you did not have to fight alone?" she asked slowly. Owen looked at her questioningly. "The other small ranchers in the area," Victoria continued, her mind working quickly. "They must be worried about the same thing. If Jenkins can bully you out of your water rights, he can do it to any of them. What if you banded together, shared legal costs, presented a united front? Owen sat back, his expression thoughtful. That could work. Jenkins is powerful, but he is not more powerful than every small rancher in the territory combined. If we stood together, he would have to back down or risk a much bigger fight than he wants, Victoria finished. And the courts would be more likely to take your side if it is clear this is not just one small rancher whining but a legitimate concern affecting the entire community. For the first time since Jenkins's visit, Owen smiled. "Miss Hart, you might have just saved my ranch." "Our ranch," Victoria said, then caught herself. "I mean the ranch where I work," but Owen's smile had widened. "Our ranch sounds better." Over the next week, Owen rode out to visit the neighboring ranches. Victoria went with him and discovered that her education and articulate manner impressed the other ranchers and their wives. She helped draft a formal petition to the territorial government, organized the coalition of small ranchers, and managed to get 3 of the larger operations to sign on in support, ranchers who were big enough that even Jenkins had to respect them. The night after they filed the petition, there was a celebration at the Broken Z. Nothing fancy, just the neighboring ranchers and their families gathering for food and music. Victoria cooked enough to feed an army and watched with quiet pleasure as people ate and laughed and thanked her for her help. Mrs. Anderson, a motherly woman in her 50s, pulled Victoria aside. "You have been good for Owen," she said warmly. "We have all been worried about him, working himself to death out here alone. It is good to see him smiling again." "He is a good man," Victoria said. "Good men are rare. They are. And good women are just as rare. I am glad you found each other." Victoria wanted to protest that they had not found each other, that this was just a working arrangement, but the words felt hollow even in her own mind. The truth was that somewhere in the past few weeks, the Broken Z had started to feel like home. Owen had started to feel like more than just her employer, and that terrified her almost as much as it gave her hope. She found Owen later that evening standing on the porch, watching the sunset. The party had wound down, and most people had gone home. Charlie and Jack were cleaning up inside, their voices a comfortable murmur through the open windows. "Thank you," Owen said as she joined him, "for all of this, for the idea, for the work, for making this happen." "I should be thanking you," Victoria replied. "You gave me a chance when I had nothing left." Owen turned to face her fully. The evening light painted him in shades of gold, softening the hard lines of his face. "Victoria," he said, using her first name for the first time, "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to beat faster. "What is it?" This started as just a job offer, a way to help someone in need while getting help I needed, but it has become more than that. You have become more than that. He took a breath, and she could see vulnerability in his eyes. "I do not want to make you uncomfortable. I do not want you to feel pressured or trapped, but I would not be honest if I did not tell you that I have feelings for you, real feelings, the kind that keep me up at night and make me smile for no reason during the day." Victoria felt her own breath catch. "Owen, you do not have to say anything," he continued quickly. "Your job is not dependent on returning my feelings. You have a place here regardless, but I could not keep pretending I was not falling in love with you. Falling in love." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning and possibility. Victoria thought about all the reasons she should be cautious, should protect herself, should not trust this. She thought about her father's debts, about the business partner who had tried to force her into a different kind of arrangement, about arriving in Old Tucson with nothing but desperation and a mourning dress. Then she thought about Owen's steady kindness, his unfailing respect, the way he looked at her like she was precious. She thought about how safe she felt here, how valued, how seen. She thought about hope, that fragile thing that had begun growing in her chest again. "I am falling in love with you too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did not think I could. I did not think I had anything left to give. But you made me believe that maybe I was wrong." The smile that broke across Owen's face was like sunrise. "Victoria, may I kiss you?" She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. Owen stepped closer, cupping her face gently with both hands like she was something infinitely precious. When his lips met hers, it was tender and careful, a question and a promise all at once. Victoria felt something break open inside her, all the walls she had built crumbling away. She kissed him back, letting herself feel it, letting herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found something real and good and lasting. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply, "and I will spend every day trying to be worthy of that." "You already are," Victoria whispered. They stood there as the stars began to emerge overhead, holding each other while the desert night settled around them. Inside, Charlie and Jack were still cleaning up, their presence a reminder that life would go on, that there were still challenges ahead. But for this moment, Victoria let herself simply be happy. The legal battle with Jenkins took 3 months to resolve, but the coalition held strong. The territorial court ruled definitively in favor of the small ranchers, and furthermore fined Jenkins for filing frivolous claims and attempting to manipulate water rights. It was a significant victory, one that sent a clear message that bullying would not be tolerated. During those 3 months, Victoria and Owen's relationship deepened and grew. There was no rush, no pressure. They took their time learning each other, sharing their pasts, building trust brick by careful brick. Victoria told him about her father's slow decline, about fleeing Philadelphia, about the terror of watching her options narrow to nothing. Owen shared his own story of losing his parents to cholera, of nearly losing the ranch in the first year before learning to manage it properly, of loneliness so deep it felt like drowning. They worked side by side during the day, Victoria managing the house and books while Owen ran the ranch. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch together, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying each other's presence. Owen taught her to ride properly, laughing gently as she learned to trust the horse beneath her. Victoria taught him to waltz, humming a tune while they moved across the main room floor, Charlie and Jack watching with undisguised amusement. It was Jack who finally said what everyone was thinking. They were all at dinner one evening, a few weeks after the court victory, when he set down his fork and looked at Owen and Victoria with exasperation. "With all due respect, boss, are you going to marry her or what? Because the way you two look at each other is making the rest of us feel like we are intruding." Charlie choked on his coffee, but he was grinning. Boy has a point. Never seen two people more clearly in love. Victoria felt her cheeks heat, but she could not help smiling. Owen reached over and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I have been planning to ask," he said, his eyes on Victoria. "I was just waiting for the right moment." "There is not going to be a more right moment than now," Jack said. "We are all here, the ranch is secure, the stars are out. What more do you need?" Owen laughed, a genuine sound of joy that made Victoria's heart soar. He stood up, still holding her hand, and then to her shock, he knelt beside her chair. From his pocket he pulled out a simple gold ring. "This was my mother's," he said softly. "She gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to someone who made me want to be a better man. Victoria Hart, you gave me hope when I was wearing down to nothing. You saved my ranch, yes, but more importantly, you saved me. You made me remember what it felt like to be truly alive. I love you with everything I am. Will you marry me?" Victoria felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in longer than she could remember, they were tears of happiness. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, Owen. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. Then he stood and pulled her up into his arms, kissing her while Charlie and Jack whooped and hollered their approval. They were married a month later in the small church in Old Tucson. Half the town turned out for the ceremony. All the ranchers they had worked with, the shopkeepers who had gotten to know Victoria, even some of the townspeople who simply wanted to witness two people who had found each other against all odds. Victoria wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Anderson had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair. Owen wore his best suit, brushed and cleaned until it shone, his hair neatly combed back. As Victoria walked down the aisle toward him, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The stagecoach carrying a woman with no hope left. The advertisement for a husband who had died before she arrived. The moment Owen Zimmerman had caught her elbow and refused to let her fall. The minister spoke about love and commitment, about two people becoming one. But Victoria barely heard the words. She was too focused on Owen's eyes, on the love she saw there, on the future that stretched ahead of them, uncertain but no longer frightening because they would face it together. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Owen did not need to be told twice. He kissed her soundly while the church erupted in applause and cheers. When they finally broke apart, both laughing, Victoria felt complete in a way she had never imagined possible. The celebration lasted well into the night at the Broken Z. There was food and music and dancing. Victoria danced with Owen, with Charlie, with Jack, with half the men in the county. But her eyes always came back to her husband, her Owen, watching her with that expression that made her feel like the most precious thing in the world. Later, much later, when the last guests had finally departed and the house was quiet, Owen carried Victoria over the threshold of what was now their shared bedroom. He set her down gently, his hands trembling slightly. "I have imagined this," he admitted. "Imagined you here, imagined being able to call you my wife." "I have imagined it too," Victoria said, reaching up to cup his face, "though I am still amazed it is real. It is real." Owen kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are mine, and I am yours, and that is as real as anything has ever been." They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other in this new way. Owen was careful and patient, making sure Victoria felt cherished and safe. And Victoria, who had thought she might never trust anyone enough for this kind of vulnerability, found herself opening like a flower in sunlight, giving herself completely because she knew beyond doubt that Owen would treasure what she gave. Afterward they lay tangled together, Victoria's head on Owen's chest, listening to his heartbeat. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back, and she could hear the smile in his voice when he spoke. "I love you, Mrs. Zimmerman." "I love you too, Mr. Zimmerman." Victoria lifted her head to look at him. "You know, when I stepped off that stagecoach, I thought my life was over. I had no hope left. I was so tired of fighting, so tired of being afraid. And then you were there, and you offered me the first kindness I had known in so long." "I am glad I was there," Owen said seriously. "I cannot imagine my life without you now. Cannot imagine this house without your presence filling it. Cannot imagine sitting down to dinner without seeing your face across the table. You changed everything, Victoria. You made me remember that life is more than just surviving from one day to the next. You showed me that hope lives here with you," Victoria whispered. "When I had none left, you gave me yours. You made me believe in good things again." "Hope lives here with us," Owen corrected, pulling her closer. "Together. Always together." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who had found each other at the exact moment they both needed saving. Outside, the Arizona night settled over the broken Z, stars wheeling overhead in their ancient patterns, the desert holding its breath in that perfect moment of peace before dawn. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges, but they faced everything together. There were droughts and difficulties, cattle that got sick, equipment that broke at the worst possible times. But there were also triumphs. The ranch prospered under their combined management, Victoria's organizational skills and Owen's hard work creating an operation that was efficient and profitable. Victoria became an integral part of the ranching community. Other wives sought her advice on managing household accounts and dealing with difficult suppliers. She started teaching reading and writing to the children in the area twice a week, turning one of the unused rooms at the ranch into a makeshift schoolroom. Owen supported her fully, proud of her intelligence and her desire to help others. Their relationship continued to deepen. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, the little things that make a life together. Owen learned that Victoria liked to watch the sunrise with her coffee, so he made sure to get up early to sit with her. Victoria learned that Owen worried more than he let on, so she made sure to talk through problems with him before they became overwhelming. They argued sometimes, as any couple does, but they learned to fight fair and always make up before sleeping. It was on their first anniversary that Victoria discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but wanted to be sure before telling Owen. When she finally did, sitting him down at the kitchen table after dinner, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. A baby. His voice was full of wonder. "We are going to have a baby in about 6 months, according to Dr. Morrison." Victoria watched his face, seeing joy and terror and love all mixed together. Owen whooped and picked her up, spinning her around before carefully setting her back down. "I am sorry, was that all right? I should be careful. You are carrying precious cargo now." Victoria laughed. "I am not made of glass, Owen, but yes, we need to be sensible." The next months passed in a flurry of preparation. Owen built a cradle with his own hands, sanding it smooth so there would be no splinters. Victoria sewed tiny clothes, her hands gentle on the soft fabric. Mrs. Anderson and the other women in the area provided advice and gifts and stories, welcoming Victoria fully into the community of mothers. There were difficult moments, too. Victoria's pregnancy was not easy. She was sick in the mornings, tired all the time, and as she grew larger, increasingly uncomfortable. But Owen was there for all of it, holding her hair when she was ill, rubbing her swollen feet at night, reading to her when she could not sleep. "I am sorry," Victoria said one night, feeling huge and ungainly. "I know this is not how you imagined your wife looking." Owen looked at her like she was insane. "Are you joking? Victoria, you are carrying our child, you are creating life. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." The baby came in early June, during one of Arizona's intense heat waves. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through a day and a night. Owen stayed with her the entire time, despite the protests of Dr. Morrison and Mrs. Anderson that it was not proper. He held her hand, wiped her forehead, whispered encouragement and love during the worst of it. When their son finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, Victoria felt a surge of love so intense it was almost painful. Owen cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the tiny person they had created together. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Victoria, he is absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas Owen Zimmerman after Owen's father. Tom was a good baby, healthy and strong despite the difficult birth. He had his mother's blue eyes and his father's dark hair, and from the beginning he had both of them wrapped around his tiny fingers. Charlie and Jack became honorary uncles, stumbling over themselves to help with the baby. Charlie, who had never married, turned out to have a surprising talent for getting Tom to stop crying. Jack carved toys with painstaking care, his rough hands gentle with the small wooden animals. Victoria discovered that she loved being a mother, even though it was exhausting and overwhelming and sometimes scary. She loved nursing Tom in the quiet morning hours, watching his tiny face in the lamplight. She loved seeing Owen with their son, the careful way he held him, the songs he sang in a low rumble that somehow always soothed the baby when nothing else would. As Tom grew from baby to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Owen expanded the operation carefully, never overextending but always looking for opportunities. Victoria managed everything with her usual efficiency, somehow balancing the books, the household, teaching her classes, and raising their son. It should have been impossible, but they made it work through teamwork and determination and love that only grew stronger with each passing year. When Tom was 3, Victoria became pregnant again. This time, she knew what to expect and the pregnancy was easier. Their daughter arrived in spring, a calmer birth that left Victoria tired but not exhausted. They named her Sarah Margaret, after Victoria's mother, and she had red hair like her brother and her father's hazel eyes. Now their family felt complete. 2 children, a successful ranch, a community that felt like extended family, and most importantly, each other. Victoria sometimes stood on the porch of the Broken Z, watching Owen play with the children in the yard, and felt overwhelmed by how much her life had changed. From desperate and hopeless to this, from nothing to everything that mattered. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked one evening. The children were asleep, the ranch was quiet, and they were sitting on the porch swing he had installed, gently rocking in the cool night air. "About hope," Victoria said, leaning against his shoulder. "About how I thought I had none left and how you proved me wrong." Owen kissed the top of her head. "You saved yourself, Victoria. I just gave you the space to do it." "No," Victoria said firmly. "We saved each other. I was drowning and you pulled me out. But you were drowning too, just in a different way. We were 2 broken people who somehow made each other whole." "The Broken Z," Owen said with a chuckle. "I never thought about what it really meant. But maybe it was always meant to be a place for broken things to become whole again." They sat in comfortable silence, the stars bright overhead. From inside, they heard Tom call out in his sleep, and Victoria started to get up, but the boy settled again. Sarah made a soft sound, then quieted. The ranch was at peace. "You ever regret it?" Victoria asked. "Offering a job to a desperate stranger in mourning clothes?" "Not for a single second," Owen said immediately. "Best decision I ever made. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Victoria. You and those 2 babies in there. You are everything." "Hope lives here with you," Victoria whispered, echoing the words she had said on their wedding night. "You told me that once and you were right. Hope lives here. Love lives here. Everything worth having lives here with you." "With us," Owen corrected, just as he always did. "Always us. Always together." The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. Tom grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch and the animals, who followed his father around asking endless questions. Sarah was more adventurous, always getting into things she should not, keeping her mother on her toes. They both learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk. Both loved the desert and the mountains. Both knew beyond doubt that they were loved and wanted. When Tom was 10 and Sarah was 7, Victoria discovered she was pregnant again. She was 35 now, and this pregnancy was harder than the others had been. Dr. Morrison, now older and grayer, urged caution. But the baby was healthy, and in the end, that was what mattered. Their second son arrived in autumn, during the brief cool season that made Arizona feel almost gentle. They named him Joseph, and he had his mother's blonde hair and a sunny disposition that charmed everyone who met him. Tom and Sarah adored their baby brother, fighting over who got to hold him, helping Victoria care for him with the earnest intensity only children can manage. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Owen eventually bought out one of the smaller neighboring properties when the owner retired, expanding the Broken Z until it was one of the most successful operations in the territory. But he never forgot where he had come from, never forgot the struggles. He paid his workers fairly, treated them with respect, and made sure everyone had what they needed. Victoria's teaching expanded too. What had started as twice-weekly lessons in their spare room eventually became a proper schoolhouse that the community built together. Victoria was the lead teacher, with help from 2 younger women she trained. Children from all over the area came to learn, and Victoria took pride in watching them grow and succeed. Jenkins, the neighbor who had once tried to drive them out, eventually sold his property and moved to California. The new owner was friendlier, and relations between the ranches improved. The coalition of small ranchers that Victoria had helped organize became a permanent fixture, a cooperative that protected everyone's interests and helped the entire region prosper. Charlie stayed with them until he was too old to work, then retired to a small house in town that Owen had helped him buy. He still came out to the ranch regularly, playing with the children and telling them exaggerated stories about the old days. Jack married a widow from town and started his own small operation, though he and Owen remained close friends and partners in various ventures. On their 20th anniversary, Victoria and Owen took a rare evening alone. Mrs. Anderson had taken the children for the night, giving them privacy they rarely had anymore. They sat on their porch swing, older now but still strong, still together. 20 years, Victoria marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I stepped off that stagecoach with nothing but a trunk and a prayer. Other times it feels like I have always been here, like anything before you was just a dream. A nightmare more like, Owen said, but you survived it. You survived everything life threw at you, and you came out stronger. Victoria turned to look at him. He was 50 now, his hair graying at the temples, lines around his eyes from decades of squinting in the sun. He was still the most handsome man she had ever seen, still the kindest, still the one who made her heart race with just a smile. "I love you," she said simply. "More now than even when we got married. I did not think that was possible, but every year I love you more." "I love you too," Owen replied, taking her hand. "You gave me everything, Victoria. A family, a real home, a reason to build something that matters. Before you, I was just existing. With you, I have been truly alive." They kissed, a gentle meeting of lips that held 20 years of love and trust and shared history. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her head on Owen's shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Victoria asked. "When I was standing in the street with nowhere to go and you offered me food. I said a lot of things that day. You said your mama would come back from the grave to tan your hide if you left a lady standing in the sun about to faint from hunger." Victoria smiled at the memory. "That was when I started to hope. That was when I thought maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world." "There was one good person," Owen said. "You. Everything else just fell into place around that." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in those familiar shades of orange and purple. From inside, they could hear the clock ticking, marking the passage of time. But time felt irrelevant in this moment, sitting here together, complete in each other. The years continued, as years do. Tom grew up and took over more and more of the ranch operations, proving to have his father's work ethic and his mother's sharp mind for business. Sarah, to everyone's surprise, became a teacher like her mother, taking over the school when Victoria finally decided to retire from that particular duty. Joseph, the youngest, turned out to have a talent for horses that was almost uncanny, and he became the one everyone in the region came to when they needed animals trained. Owen and Victoria grew older together gracefully. Owen's hair went fully gray, then white. Victoria developed laugh lines around her eyes and mouth, testament to decades of happiness. They still worked on the ranch, though in less physically demanding roles. Victoria managed the books and the correspondence. Owen oversaw operations and mentored Tom. They still sat on the porch swing every evening, still held hands, still looked at each other with love that had only deepened over the years. When grandchildren started arriving, first from Tom and his wife Emma, then from Sarah and her husband James, Victoria and Owen welcomed them with open arms and full hearts. The Broken Z became a gathering place for the extended family, with Sunday dinners that could include 20 people or more, all eating and laughing and loving together. Victoria sometimes thought about the woman she had been when she arrived in Old Tucson. That desperate girl in mourning clothes who thought her life was over. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that everything would be all right, that hope was waiting just around the corner in the form of a cowboy with kind eyes and an open heart. But maybe she did not need to. Maybe that girl was still there inside her, the one who had survived and persevered and refused to give up even when giving up seemed like the only option. Maybe that girl had grown into this woman, whole and happy and loved, and maybe that was the point. That we carry all our previous selves inside us, and they make us who we are. Owen had a heart attack when he was 68. It was not fatal, but it was serious enough that Dr. Morrison's son, who had taken over his father's practice, insisted on bed rest and taking things easier. Owen grumbled about it, but Victoria was firm. "You are not leaving me," she said, sitting beside his bed and holding his hand. "We made it this far together. You do not get to leave now." "I am not planning to," Owen assured her. "I have too much to stick around for. Grandchildren to spoil, a ranch to watch over, and most importantly, a wife I am still madly in love with." He recovered, though he did have to slow down. Tom fully took over running the ranch, with Joseph managing the horse operations and Sarah helping with the books when Victoria needed assistance. But Owen was still there, still offering advice, still walking the property every day even if he could not do the heavy work anymore. On their 40th anniversary, the entire family gathered at the Broken Z for a massive celebration. Children and grandchildren, friends and neighbors, everyone who loved them or had been touched by their story. Tables were set up in the yard, groaning under the weight of food. Musicians played, and people danced as the sun set over the desert. Victoria wore a new dress for the occasion, still simple but beautiful, made by Sarah with love and care. Owen wore his best suit, the same one he had worn for their wedding, carefully preserved over the years. They danced together as the sun painted the sky, moving slowly to music that seemed to play just for them. 40 years, Owen said, holding her close. The best 40 years anyone could ask for. The best 40 years so far, Victoria corrected. We have plenty more ahead of us. Damn right we do, Owen agreed and kissed her soundly, to the cheers and applause of everyone watching. Tom stood up to make a toast. His children clustered around him. "To my parents," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd, "who taught me what real love looks like. Who built something lasting not just in this ranch but in this family. who proved that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them, from the most unlikely places. To Owen and Victoria Zimmerman, may they have 40 more years together. Hear, hear. Everyone chorused, raising their glasses. Victoria felt tears on her cheeks, but they were happy tears. She looked around at the gathering, at the children and grandchildren, at the friends and neighbors, at the ranch that had been saved and had prospered. She thought about that day 40 years ago, stepping off the stagecoach with no hope left, and how a cowboy with a kind heart had given her more than hope. He had given her a life worth living, a love worth having, a home worth building. "Hope lives here with me," Owen had told her all those years ago, and he had been right. Hope had lived there with him and with her and with all of them. Hope had grown and flourished like a desert flower after rain, unexpected and beautiful and stronger than anyone could have imagined. They were both 70 when Owen's heart finally gave out for good. He died quietly in his sleep on a Tuesday night in April, Victoria asleep beside him. She woke to find him cold, his face peaceful, and though she wept, though her heart broke at the loss, she was grateful. Grateful that he had not suffered, grateful for all the years they had shared, grateful that the last thing he saw was her face, and the last thing he felt was her hand in his. The funeral was huge. It seemed like half the territory turned out to pay respects to Owen Zimmerman, the man who had been fair and honest and kind to everyone he met. Victoria stood straight and strong through it, her children and grandchildren around her, accepting condolences with grace, even though inside she felt shattered. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, a place where he could watch over everything he had built. Tom installed a beautiful headstone, simple but elegant, with Owen's name and dates and a single line beneath. He gave hope when hope was needed most. Victoria visited the grave every day. She would sit on the bench Tom had placed there and talk to Owen, telling him about the ranch, about the children, about all the small daily things he had always cared about. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just sat in silence, feeling his presence in the wind and the sun. The family wanted her to move in with one of them, worried about her being alone, but Victoria refused. "I am staying at the Broken Z," she said firmly. "This is my home. This is where I belong." So she stayed, with Tom and Emma moving into one of the ranch houses so she would not be completely alone. She still managed the books, still taught occasionally when Sarah needed help at the school, still sat on the porch swing every evening even though now there was only one person on it. Victoria lived for another 8 years after Owen's death. They were good years, filled with watching her grandchildren grow up and even welcoming great-grandchildren. She was sharp and active until the very end, still riding out to check on things around the ranch even in her late 70s. One evening in June, Victoria did not come in for dinner. Tom went looking for her and found her on the porch swing, her eyes closed, a peaceful smile on her face. In her hand was a letter, one Owen had written her years before, telling her how much he loved her and how grateful he was that she had walked into his life. She had simply gone to sleep and not woken up, slipping away as gently as a sigh. The doctor said her heart had given out, but Tom knew better. She had missed Owen, had lived without him as long as she could, and when it was time, she had gone to be with him again. They buried her beside Owen on the hill, their headstones side by side, two people who had found each other and built something beautiful together. Victoria's stone read, "She brought hope when she thought she had none left." The ranch continued after them. Tom ran it until he passed it to his own son. The Broken Z remained in the family for generations, a testament to what two people can build when they work together, when they love each other, when they refuse to give up even when everything seems impossible. The story of how the ranch came to be, The story of Victoria Hart stepping off a stagecoach with nothing and Owen Zimmerman offering her a chance became family legend. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren heard about the bride who came with no hope left and the cowboy who gave her one, who told her hope lives here with me, and who spent 40 years proving it. The porch swing remained in place for over a century, carefully maintained by each generation. It became tradition for newly married couples in the family to sit there together on their wedding night, continuing the legacy of love and hope and partnership that had started so long ago. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun painted the desert in shades of orange and purple, if you sat very still on that swing, you could almost feel them there. Victoria and Owen together again, watching over the home they built, the family they created, the legacy they left behind. A legacy not of wealth or power, but of something far more valuable. Proof that hope and love can flourish even in the harshest landscapes, that kindness matters more than anything, and that sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them, from the most unlikely places. The broken Z stood as a monument to that truth, its name taking on new meaning with each generation. Not broken as in damaged beyond repair, but broken open, split wide to let in light and love and hope. A place where broken people could become whole again, where desperation could transform into determination, where a bride with no hope left could find a cowboy who gave her one, and together they could build something that would last forever. And in the end, that is exactly what they did.